A question that I often get as a strategic planning facilitator is, where should I start with a strategic plan? Where do we even start? And there's a lot of ways you can go. There's not one right place, but here's what I would say. And what I do as a facilitator of strategic plan for organizations is, when I meet with the executive director or that organization's leader, is the first questions I begin to ask are about the people around them, their team members or the board members. And I begin to ask them, do they want a strategic plan? Why is this necessary? Why do you want a plan? Because it's really the team that is going to have to see it through. And my friend Scott and I often talk about the two reasons why strategic plans fail. And we say it's, number one, silent sabotage, where people weren't bought into the plan, so they end up sabotaging it. Or the other one would be fourth quarter failure. You know, you can get that plan, you put it on the shelf, and nobody knows what it is, and nobody follows through on it. So in order to avoid those two things, you have to take a little bit of time to understand where the people are around you. John Cotter, the author, called it a guiding coalition. He said you always need a guiding coalition to guide your team. There's other ways you can put it together, but whether it's a guiding coalition, whether it's a committee that creates the plan, whether it's your board, whether it's your lead staff or your leadership team, you have to know where they're at and begin to have the conversation with them about, are they on board with this? And know where everybody's at. Sometimes I'll even map out. You know, I might do a red, yellow, and a green to know where everyone's at. Maybe this person's in the red area. They're not real excited about it. This person's, they're lukewarm, so they're yellow. And then green are those people that are ready to go. So always look at where the team is. Don't jump right into the plan. Don't jump right into, you know, do we do a SWOT analysis? And how do we do a SWOT analysis? Or do we need our mission and vision and values? You know, how do we do that? Or what are our goals and what are our objectives? You know, make sure that that you understand your team. You understand, is there trust on the team? You understand, is there a lack of trust? You understand, you know, where everybody's at. How long have they been there? And I'll call it a stakeholder analysis even, where I'll go in. Sometimes I won't even say this is stakeholder analysis, but I still will do that on an Excel sheet, on a Word doc, or I'll just write it down on the back of a napkin. But I'm always asking those questions. They're absolutely the most important thing. Then the next thing that I'll ask the executive director or the one that feels like they need a plan is why. Why do you need it? Why is it important to you? Your why will be the thing that is the force that gets you through the process. Strategic plans can often be a painful process if people aren't bought in, if the why isn't strong enough. I know a lot of small nonprofits or groups have said at various times that they had PTSD from their last strategic plan and they don't want to do it again. Or it was a very painful process. Or, hey, this is like going to the dentist, right? And I would say the first maybe time or two that I did strategic planning, it was like that. I was a bit inexperienced. I was a coach. I had been asked to do strategic planning. I didn't really understand the unique dynamics of that team that was going to be different than the way I had coached prior to. I actually needed mediation skills. I needed facilitation skills. I didn't have them. I needed to understand the structure of a strategic plan. I didn't have those skills. And what I had to learn real quick, find out who was bought in. We had to find a way to make it fun. You know, we had to find a way to actually give people psychological air. People need psychological air through whether it's space, whether it's time, whether it's their initiatives that actually they have confidence they'll be implemented, or we just have fun during the process. But we have to do those things to allow it to come off with some ease and some energy. Once you do that, once you know your why, then we can look at where do we really start. And from a facilitation point of view, what would I facilitate first? It's usually a SWOT. It's oftentimes a SWOT analysis. Why is SWOT? Why is SWOT first? A SWOT stands for S is strength, W is weakness, O is opportunity, and T is threat. So your SWOT analysis, strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat. Why we do that early on in the facilitation process is to really understand what are we facing, right? What's really out there? If we're going to set goals, if we're going to redefine our mission or our vision or our values, if we're going to try to commit to actions and follow through and move our organization forward, fulfill our mission, we kind of have to know what are we facing. What's the world we're facing? And sometimes, and actually most of the time, I'll even step back and maybe do something I'll call an analysis or an assessment. And I call it a current realities instrument, ultimately. Current realities instrument. What are the current realities? Like, where are you now? Where are your finances now? Where are your performance now? What are the metrics right now? Things like that. I might also look at what's the competition like? What are the barriers you're facing? What are the political forces in the world? What are the technological forces, the legal forces, the environmental forces, the economic forces that might be facing you? So we might even do like a pestle analysis or some sort of demographics or something like that to really understand your current realities. So we'll do a current realities then, and that then goes right into a SWOT analysis. And at that point then, we want to know how you're positioned to your market or to your target audience or who you're called to serve. And we really want to know, is your mission strong enough or is your mission still relevant? During the time, the COVID pandemic, when a lot of organizations weren't working and they had to shift their work schedule and a lot were going to online formats rather than meeting in person. And some people were laid off. And an organization called me in and I spoke to the organization and they wondered, are we going to get through this? And I said, what is your mission? And they told me their mission. And I said, is your mission still relevant in the world we live in? Is your mission still relevant today? Are you still passionate about it? Do you still want to be a part of this mission or not? Because if you want to be a part of this mission, you're going to get through this. If not, then you may not get through it. You may have to redefine your mission. You may have to say, we can't do this anymore. Maybe we disband. A lot of firms disbanded during that time. But there were a few that I talked with and they said, our mission is more relevant right now than it's ever been. And therefore, they ended up meeting on Zoom. They went above and beyond. The fundraising that they normally, were able to do, they couldn't do. And some people just stepped up and said, we're going to give a few $1,000s. When that person did, somebody else said, I'll do a matching donation. And then a third person on that same call said, I'll match it also. All of a sudden, they were getting as much as they would have got from their big fundraiser or a big golf outing they had to do. So their mission, once I had them evaluated, they said, it's relevant. It's meaningful. We care about this. We're not going to let it go. So that mission is vital. And the mission is your reason for being, your why. It's your why. It's your driving force. Then we'll get into vision, probably values if they're not already stated, and then strategic initiatives. What are those big, broad initiatives? And then goals. And we try to smart the goals, make them specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and timed. And then action steps and follow through and develop a cadence of accountability and a scoreboard and things like that. But coming back to that question that's asked of me a lot, and that is, where do we start? Where do we even get started? If I'm a new executive director or I just haven't done one in 10 years, where do we start now? And again, you have to know your team. You have to know the people on board with you. Are they the right people? You have to know, is our mission strong enough? Is it strong enough to see the rest of this stuff through? Because when we're facing adversity, if the mission isn't strong enough, if your why isn't there, You're just not going to have the energy to see it through. And then we have to look at that SWOT, like I said, or that current realities assessment. Where are we at? What are we facing? What are we up against? What are our obstacles and barriers? And know what they are, so now we know how to plan and set goals accordingly. So I'm Tim Figley. This is my response to the question that I always get on where do we start with a strategic